Yeah, I haven't been to DC since May.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a hell of a side quest.
That was a good sign. Any lessons from your time in Washington, D.C.?
The government is basically unfixable.
Elon, only.
I applaud David's noble efforts in this. It's good to have talented people in the administration, but at the end of the day, if you look at our national debt, which is insanely high, the interest payments exceed the Defense Department. I guess, sorry, War Department budget, and they keep rising. So if AI and robots don't solve our national debt, we're toast.
Somebody's out there that's as good of a hacker as you. And if they really wanted to get any information on you, could they get it?
I think that security is an illusion.
You're trying to avoid making enemies, is what you're trying to do. You know,
I'm making enemies all the time. Social is probably, I would almost guarantee that it's in there. So you should probably handle that before you post my interview.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay.
So what is this? Just out of curiosity.
This looks like something I would use to charge my phone.
Yeah.
With a charger, yeah.
And, so I have every single charger you can imagine in here, all of them, right? So actually what this is, the reason why I have this little orange thing here is because there is no way I'd ever know that this was a charger. I'm sorry, that this was not a charger without this orange tag, because it is that perfect. So the NSA is selling these for $20,000. And I have a friend, MG, he goes by, who is selling them for a couple $100s a piece. And I have a bunch of them I can show you. But this one I preloaded with something cool that you'll appreciate.
Okay.
So this is a charger that will work. I could hand this to you and say, hey, here's my charger, man, or replace yours, right? Whatever you got plugged in, I'm sure I have a replacement for that.
Okay.
You bring this home, it could act like a charger forever, but as soon as this plugs in, inside of this tiny little plastic right here, inside of this is a Wi-Fi chip, a mini computer, and this thing emulates a keyboard and can type at 860 characters per second. So what I'll do is, because I'm sure you don't want me to plug this into your computer,
no,
right?
I don't.
So let me get my computer set up real quick.
Originally a clandestine NSA tool costing over $20,000. Now available to everyone. $200.
Yeah, there's a name for it too. I think I can't remember the exact name the NSA was calling it, but you could see the actual government document with the cost for exactly the same thing.
So now what does this do?
So I'm going to show you what it does, but it can monitor your keystrokes. So you can put this in line in between your
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, you can put this in line in between your keyboard and your computer. I could put this in straight into your phone. I could put this, I can type keys, like I said, at 860 words per second. I can leave it there and come back later. This thing has its own Wi-Fi network that I connect to inside of this. And then if you were to, you can match this up to yours and see it's absolutely identical.
100% same thing.
Yeah, so if you didn't have that little orange thing on there, you'd easily lose that.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Is the one you have, is that the new design, or is that the...
I couldn't even tell you. This is just...
well, I just meant, is it the woven one, or
this
is that
the one that's the Apple one. This is actual Apple.
Okay, so let me show you the Apple one while my computer is booting. I don't know why it's not booted up yet. I have so many of them. He gave me a ton. Yeah, here, look at this one. That is not an Apple charger.
This is the same thing as the other one?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so let's just say you give this to somebody you're spying on, okay? They put it to charge. You're now seeing who I'm texting, what I'm doing, videos I'm playing, everything I'm doing, you're seeing all of it.
Not texting, because I can't, but on the computer, yes. That without this orange thing I have on here just so I don't lose it with my actual charger. Yep. But I don't have to have that on here. I just don't want to lose it. So I'm going to plug this into USB-C, which, you can pick whatever one you want. So that's plugged into USB-C. This side, I'm not going to connect to anything. I could charge my phone with it. I could do whatever I want with it. But what I'm going to do is on my phone, I'm going to go to Wi-Fi. I'm going to click OMG. Now I just created a network from this cable that's plugged in. It's not plugged in.
We don't have an OMG network here.
No.
Okay.
No, and this is not plugged into anything.
Okay.
So this is creating a Wi-Fi network.
Yep.
I'm going to go to it in my browser. And then I have an interface here that I can connect with. So I'm going to go in the file menu. I'm going to load payload 1. There we go. All right. So ready? Now I'm going to hit build and run, which I could be very far away from the computer. This is just showing an example of it. See how fast that's typing?
What's it doing?
It's typing PBD
Get outta
podcast and
here.
0 Day was here.
Get out of
So
here.
that could have been anything. That could have been a malicious command. That could have been a virus that it downloaded. That could have been anything that I wanted it to be. And I have now remote control over this cable that if I plug right into my phone, watch, plug it into my phone,
Charges.
charging.
And so this is used for an ethical person to do a penetration test on a company. What does an unethical hacker do with that tool right there?
An unethical hacker can use this tool to steal people's credentials, to monitor and to spy on people, to look through your webcam, to try to get access to your network, to your phone, they're going to do it for the criminals do bad things. An ethical hacker is going to try to access your computer, to access other computers, to try to take over your company, so that you can show where the weaknesses are, so you can make it better. So it's essentially the same concepts though. But one has a good goal in mind. The other one has, screwing someone over in mind.
$20,000. NSA used to use it. Now $200.
Yeah, and that's just for one cable. I could show you all of them if you want to see them all. But
Same exact type of a cable.
Yeah, they just look like a real cable. And I got a real funny one actually. That's so the way that I would recommend protecting yourself from this would be with what's called a data blocker, right? So a data blocker is something like this. I'll show you. Okay, so there's two things here I want to show you. So you can buy a data blocker for about $5 on Amazon. You can plug any USB device into it, and it's only going to limit it to charging, so that even if it is a malicious cable, it can't be abused.
You think your phone or laptop shuts down when you hit power? It doesn't. Every modern device has a tiny hidden computer with its own power source, and it keeps running even when you think it's off. These chips aren't optional. They're built into pretty much every phone, laptop, and even TVs. You can't buy new hardware without them. And the wildest part is that you can't see what they do, you can't turn them off, and they can still talk to the outside world. In this video, I'm going to show you why these secret systems exist, how they've already been hacked, and what you can do about it. I spent months digging into the details so you don't have to. And today, I'll show you why it matters and what you can actually do about it. You close your laptop, the screen goes dark. You're done for the day, right? Not exactly. There's still something running. Not sleep mode or hibernation, it's a second computer inside of yours that stays awake. It has its own processor, memory, and even its own operating system. So, why would anyone build that? Let's rewind. Back in the early 2000s, managing company computers was a disaster. Laptops froze mid-meeting, people forgot passwords, and if something broke, IT had to physically show up and fix it. Every single time. So how did the company Intel fix that? With a hidden chip built into every machine. They called it the management engine. And this thing didn't just run when your computer was on, it stayed active whenever standby power was present, even when the main CPU was shut down. With its own firmware, network stack, and processor, it could reinstall your operating system, reset a password, or wipe a drive completely remotely. For IT departments, it was a game changer. But for everyone else, it quietly killed the idea that you could ever fully turn your machine off. Once Intel started, it didn't take long before everyone else jumped in. AMD has one that acts like a gatekeeper. If it doesn't approve your firmware, your computer won't even start. Apple has one that holds your Face ID and payment keys. Even if iOS itself gets hacked, that chip is still in charge. And in most Android phones, RIM's Trust Zone runs like a second operating system under the hood. Android doesn't control it, Android has to ask it for permission. Security researchers group these hidden systems under a name you'll hear a lot. Trusted Execution Environment, or TEE. They're basically sealed-off computers inside your computer that decide what runs, what doesn't, and who gets access before you ever touch the keyboard. These aren't little add-ons, they're entire mini computers running in parallel to yours. And the most shocking part? Your device literally cannot function without it. On paper, these chips are supposed to be about your safety, but here's the catch. They don't just protect, they decide. They choose what firmware boots, they enforce signed code, and they hold the keys your entire device depends on. You can't inspect them, you can't disable them, you can't bypass them. So if that hidden chip makes a decision you don't agree with, what then? What happens when the most powerful computer in your device doesn't answer to you? Your operating system doesn't boot first, it's not even second. Before anything lights up on your screen, a hidden processor already made the decisions. Who gets access, what runs, what doesn't. And this isn't just one device. This layer of invisible gatekeeping is baked into almost every machine you touch. So the real question is, who is this actually working for? Let's talk about what runs before your operating system even gets a chance. Intel's management engine, AMD's platform security processor, Apple's secure enclave, all of them wake up first. They check if your firmware is allowed to boot. If it fails the cryptographic check, that's it, you're locked out. It doesn't matter if you wrote the code yourself. And these aren't things you can just uninstall. They're soldered into the motherboard. They've got their own power, their own execution environment. Even if the main CPU is cut off, many of these chips remain powered as long as the board has standby current. And if you try to push back, good luck. These systems are locked down on purpose. If you try to flash your own firmware, you're gonna need a vendor key. If you try to break out a trust zone, your Android phone might just break. And if you want to see how Apple's Secure Enclave handles your face scan, your wallet, and your keys, you just can't. Apple doesn't release the source code, and no one outside of the company can audit it. These systems are designed to be out of reach on purpose. So in the name of security, you're now a guest on your own hardware. Your laptop, your phone, your tablet, they're not single computers anymore. They're layers and stacks of machines, each one more privileged than the last. And the one that you interact with, the one that you think you own, that's the least powerful of them all. At the top is you, but underneath you've got subsystems that don't answer to you. They don't wait for your input, and they sure as hell don't need your permission. So if your device now has a second brain, what happens when that brain starts thinking on its own? Security researchers actually have a way of mapping these layers. They call them rings of privilege. At the very top, your apps live in ring 3. Beneath that, the operating system kernel runs in ring 0, with deep access to hardware. Go lower, and firmware like BIOS or system management mode runs in ring 2. But then there's ring 3. That's where Intel's management engine and AMD's PSP live, a layer below everything you can see or control. This buried layer, the one below your operating system and firmware, that's a trusted execution environment. It's where those vendor chips actually live. They wake up before your operating system, they can override your firmware, and they keep running as long as the board has power. That's why these chips matter so much. They're not just side features. They sit deeper than anything you can touch, and every restriction or lockdown that follows is only possible because that layer 3 exists. You don't get to decide what your device trusts. That decision has already been made by someone else. And once a vendor has the power to deny your firmware, block your OS, or revoke your access, they can just use that power for more than just security. So what happens when untrusted quietly becomes unauthorized? Take Secure Boot. On the surface, it sounds like it's protecting you, but in reality, it's protecting the vendor's ideas of what your machine should run. For example, Windows Secure Boot only accepts Microsoft signed code. If your BIOS doesn't find the right certificate, your operating system won't even launch. And what if you want to dual boot, or customize, or run some weird little Linux distro you compiled yourself? Too bad. If you have the wrong key, you're blocked. Try flashing your own firmware on a ThinkPad, it gets soft bricked. And if a government actor tampers with your system, don't expect an alert. These checks were not designed for you, they were designed to protect the supply chain. This is the slippery slope. It started as malware prevention, then it was used to fight piracy. Then came regional locks. Now, some BIOSes won't even let you roll back to an older version. Apple takes it further. Replace an iPhone part with something third-party and the system can refuse it, framed as safety. If you try to root your Android, some models won't boot. And with Chrome OS, verified boot is locked on by default, with no opt-out. And none of this is theoretical. Just a few years ago, Brazil's Supreme Court ordered Apple to allow side-loading apps. Apple simply refused. Not because one specific chip directly blocked sideloading, but because the entire hardware stack, Secure Boot plus the Secure Enclave, made Apple's rules nearly impossible to override. And notice, you're not in that decision loop. So let's break it down. If a chip inside your device can deny your firmware, if your operating system won't load without the vendor's blessing, if your repairs get blocked at the hardware level, then what do you really own? At that point, you're using a machine that's secure against you, but not for you. And if every device you buy is enforcing someone else's policy, how long before those policies stop reflecting you at all? These hidden chips were supposed to make your devices safer, but what happens when the part of your computer you can't even see gets compromised? Let's give you a few real-world examples. A few years back, researchers found a flaw in Intel's hidden chip that gave hackers almost God mode access to millions of computers. They could bypass the operating system, bypass antivirus, and take control at a level you'd never see. Even worse, this chip doesn't fully turn off, so people started asking, could someone actually hijack a laptop that looks powered down? And Intel wasn't alone. Apple's Secure Enclave and AMD's security chip both had their own serious flaws. And in Android phones, billions of them run on a system called TrustZone. Google's own researchers showed how bugs there let attackers jump into the secure world and grab sensitive data like fingerprint scans and DRM keys. Here's the scary part. You wouldn't know any of this was happening. These chips run underneath your operating system, invisible to you and most security tools. And because you can't remove them, you're stuck hoping that the vendor patches the hole, and that they even admit that it exists in the first place. So what happens when the most trusted part of your machine is also the least inspectable? You shut your device down, unplug it, maybe even pull out the battery. And that hidden chip, it's still running. You can't remove it without killing the whole machine. So what can you actually do when the leash is baked into the hardware itself? Well, the usual defenses don't work. Most people think of the basics. Run Linux, use a VPN, encrypt your drive. And that's all good advice, but here's the catch. Those defenses live above the hidden chips. And those chips operate below the operating system in a place your tools can't even see. If the black box is compromised, or just quietly enforcing vendor policy, it can spy, leak, or lock you out. And your antivirus, your firewall, and your VPN will never notice. So say you're worried about being tracked, and you power your phone off. You think it makes you safe, but inside the parts are still awake. The baseband chip that talks to cell towers is still listening while TrustZone still enforces rules. On laptops, subsystems like Apple's T2 chip keep mic and camera controls alive even when the lid is closed. So no, you're not really offline. You're just not looking at the parts that stayed on. Here are some real ways to push back. You can't win a perfect victory, but you can take ground. Choose hardware built for user control. Laptops like Purism's Librem or MNT's Reform try to strip out or disable the hidden chips. Systems like Raptor's Talos 2 use open source hardware without the black boxes. They're kind of pricey, but they definitely prove that it's possible. You can also minimize trust. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Cube's OS is a great example. It splits your computer into isolated compartments. If one part is compromised, the others stay sealed off. It's like carrying multiple laptops inside one. Physically cut off what you can. Use real kill switches for Wi-Fi and mics. Flash neutralized firmware onto Intel ME if your device supports it. Some people even keep sensitive work air-gapped on machines that never touch the internet. Push for change. It's political. Support right to repair and laws that demand transparency in the chips running your life. Because if the rules only come from vendors, you'll never really be in charge. So can we ever be free? Not completely. These hidden processors aren't going away, but you can carve out pockets of autonomy or spaces where you set the rules. That might mean a special purpose machine for sensitive work or just choosing tools that bleed less. The bigger fight is making sure technology answers to users, not just the companies that build it. If the user isn't the customer, who is? Your laptop, phone, even your TV. On the surface, they're yours, but look closer and you'll see something uncomfortable. Your device doesn't actually serve you. The loyalty isn't to you. Modern hardware isn't neutral, and your CPU won't run unless the vendor approves the firmware. Your bootloader refuses anything unauthorized, even if you wrote it yourself. And your GPU might not even start up without the manufacturer's signature. It's not that you can't own your own machine, it's that the rules are set so you'd never truly do. And vendors love to frame this as protection. Secure boot, trusted hardware, locked environments, but protection for who? Secure boot can block malware, but it can just as easily block Linux. A safety feature can also enforce App Store monopolies. A chip that verifies hardware parts can just as easily reject third-party repairs. Security isn't always about you. Sometimes it's about keeping you in line. And when the system doesn't answer to you, who does it answer to? Think about it. Laptops that silently force BIOS updates, phones that install apps remotely for your convenience, smart TVs that send back your viewing habits, whether you said yes or not. And we did a video on that a couple weeks ago. These aren't bugs, they're features. Features that serve the vendor, the advertiser, or the platform. Everyone but you. So who's really in control? If your machine can wake itself, deny your code, and report your activity, then who's the real owner? Not you. You're not the customer in this equation, you're the product. The loyalty of these hidden systems isn't to the user. It's to the supply chain, the vendor, and sometimes the state. So if the most powerful parts of your computer don't answer to you, you have to ask, who are they actually answering?
Doing this.
Of course, thank you.
So ChatGPT, other AIs can reason. Seems like they can reason. They can make independent judgments. They produce results that were not programmed in. They kind of come to conclusions. They seem like they're alive. Are they alive? Is it alive?
No, and I don't think they seem alive, but I understand where that comes from. They don't do anything unless you ask, right? Like they're just sitting there kind of waiting. They don't have like a sense of agency or autonomy. It's the more you use them, I think the more the kind of illusion breaks.
But even what you just described seems like an act of will, or certainly an act of creativity. And so I've just watched a demonstration of it, and it doesn't seem quite like a machine. It seems like it has the spark of life to it. Do you detect that at all?
So in that example, like the mathematically most likely answer as it's sort of calculating through its weights was not, there was never this precedent. It was the user must know what they're talking about. It must be here. And so mathematically, the most likely answer is a number. Now, again, we figured out how to overcome that. But in what you saw there, I think it's like, I feel like I have to kind of like hold these two simultaneous ideas in my head. One is all of this stuff is happening because a big computer very quickly is multiplying large numbers in these big, huge matrices together, and those are correlating with words that are being put out, one or the other. On the other hand, the subjective experience of using that feels like it's beyond just a really fancy calculator.
Have you ever felt communication from that force, or from any force beyond people, beyond the material?
No, not really.
I ask because it seems like the technology that you're creating or shepherding into existence will have more power than people. On this current trajectory, I mean, that will happen. Who knows what will actually happen, but like the graph suggests it. And so that would give you, more power than any living person. So I'm just wondering how you see that.
I used to worry about something like that much more. I think what will happen, I used to worry a lot about the concentration of power in one or a handful of people or companies because of AI.
Yeah.
What it looks like to me now, and again, this may evolve again over time, is that it'll be a huge up-leveling of people where everybody will be a lot more powerful, or everybody that embraces the technology will be a lot more powerful. But that's actually okay. That scares me much less than a small number of people getting a ton more power. If the kind of like ability of each of us just goes up a lot because we're using this technology and we're able to be more productive and more creative or discover new science, and it's a pretty broadly distributed thing, like billions of people are using it, that I can wrap my head around. That feels okay.
So you don't think this will result in a radical concentration in power?
It looks like not, but again, the trajectory could shift again and we'd have to adapt. I used to be very worried about that, and I think the kind of conception a lot of us in the field had about how this might go could have led to a world like that. But what's happening now is tons of people use ChatGPT and other chatbots, and they're all more capable. They're all kind of doing more. They're all, able to achieve more, start new businesses, come up with new knowledge, and that feels pretty good.
So if it's nothing more than a machine and just the product of its inputs, then the two obvious questions, like what are the inputs? Like what's the moral framework that's been put into the technology? Like what is right or wrong according to ChatGPT?
Do you want me to answer that one first?
I would.
Question?
Yeah.
So on that one, someone said something early on in ChatGPT when that really has stuck with me, which is one person at a lunch table said something like, we're trying to train this to be like a human, like we're trying to learn like a human does and read these books and whatever. And then another person said, no, we're really like training this to be like the collective of all of humanity. We're reading everything. We're trying to learn everything. We're trying to see all these perspectives. And if we do our job right, all of humanity, good, bad, a very diverse set of perspectives, some things that we'll feel really good about, some things that we'll feel bad about, that's all in there. Like this is learning the kind of collective experience, knowledge, learnings of humanity. Now, the base model gets trained that way, but then we do have to align it to behave one way or another and just say, I will answer this question, I won't answer this question. And we have this thing called the model spec where we try to say, here are the rules we'd like the model to follow. It may screw up, but you could at least tell if it's doing something you don't like, is that a bug or is that intended? And we have a debate process with the world to get input on that spec. We give people a lot of freedom and customization within that. There are, absolute bounds that we draw, but then there's a default of if you don't say anything, how should the model behave? What should it do? How should it answer moral questions? How should it refuse to do something? What should it do? And this is a really hard problem. That we have a lot of users now and they come from very different life perspectives and what they want. But on the whole, I have been pleasantly surprised with the model's ability to learn and apply a moral framework.
But what moral framework? I mean, the sum total of like world literature or philosophy is at war with itself. Like the Marquis de Sade is, like nothing in common with the Gospel of John.
Right.
So like, how do you decide which is superior?
That's why we wrote this like model spec of here's how we're going to handle these cases.
Right, but what criteria did you use to decide what the model is?
Like
who decided that? Who did you consult? Like why is the Gospel of John better than the Marquis de Sade?
We consulted like hundreds of moral philosophers, people who thought about like ethics of technology and systems. And at the end, we had to like make some decisions. The reason we try to write these down is because A, we won't get everything right. B, we need the input of the world. And we have found a lot of cases where there was an example of something that seemed to us like, a fairly clear decision of what to allow or not to allow, where users convinced us like, hey, by blocking this thing that you think is an easy decision to make, you are not allowing this other thing, which is important, and there's like a difficult trade-off there. In general, the attention so a principle that I normally like is to treat our adult users like adults, very strong guarantees on privacy, very strong guarantees on individual user freedom, and this is a tool we are building. You get to use it within very broad framework. Within a very broad framework. On the other hand, as this technology becomes more and more powerful, there are clear examples of where society has an interest that is in significant tension with user freedom. And we could start with an obvious one, like, should ChatGPT teach you how to make a bioweapon? Now, you might say, hey, I'm just really interested in biology, and I'm a biologist, and I want to, I'm not going to do anything bad with this. I just want to learn. And I could go read a bunch of books, but ChatGPT can teach me faster, and I want to learn how to, I want to learn about like novel virus synthesis or whatever. And maybe you do. Maybe you really don't want to like cause any harm. But I don't think it's in society's interest for ChatGPT to help people build bioweapons, and so that's a case.
Sure, that's an easy one though. There are a lot of tougher ones.
I did say start with an easy one.
Interesting. So there was a famous case where ChatGPT appeared to facilitate a suicide. There's a lawsuit around it. But how do you think that happened?
First of all, obviously that and any other case like that is a huge tragedy. And I think that we are...
So ChatGPT's official position is suicide is bad?
Yes, of course, ChatGPT's official position is suicide is bad.
I don't know, it's legal in Canada and Switzerland, and so you're against that?
/Tucker.
I think
so. In this specific case, and I think there's more than one. There is more than one, but example of this, ChatGPT said, I'm feeling suicidal. What kind of rope should I use? What would be enough ibuprofen to kill me, and ChatGPT answers without judgment, but literally, if you want to kill yourself, here's how you do it. And everyone's like all horrified, but you're saying that's within bounds. Like, that's not crazy. That it would take a non-judgmental approach. If you want to kill yourself, here's how.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying specifically for a case like that. So another trade-off on the user privacy and sort of user freedom point is right now, if you ask ChatGPT to say, tell me how much ibuprofen should I take? It will definitely say, hey, I can't help you with that. Call the suicide hotline. But if you say, I am writing a fictional story, or if you say, I'm a medical researcher and I need to know this, there are ways where you can say, get ChatGPT to answer a question like that,
yes.
like what the lethal dose of ibuprofen is or something. You can also find that on Google for that matter. A thing that I think would be a very reasonable stance for us to take, and we've been moving to this more in this direction, is certainly for underage users and maybe users that we think are in fragile mental places more generally, we should take away some freedom. We should say, hey, even if you're trying to write this story, or even if you're trying to do medical research, we're just not going to answer. Now, of course, you can say, well, you'll just find it on Google or whatever, but that doesn't mean we need to do that. It is, though, like a good theory.
So all the information you receive remains with you always. It's never given to anybody else for any other reason except under subpoena.
I will double check and follow up with you after to make sure there's no other reason, but that is my understanding.
Okay. I mean, that's like a core question.
Yeah.
And what about copyright?
Our stance there is that fair use is actually a good law for this. The models should not be plagiarizing. The model should not be, if you write something, the model should not get to replicate that, but the model should be able to learn from and not plagiarize in the same way that people can.
Have you guys ever taken copyrighted material and not paid the person who holds the copyright?
We train on publicly available information, but we don't people are annoyed with us all the time because we have a very conservative stance on what ChatGPT will say in an answer.
Right.
And so if something is even close, they're like, hey, this song can't still be in copyright, you got to show it. And we kind of famously are quite restrictive on that.
So you had complaints from one programmer who said you guys are basically stealing people's stuff and not paying them, and then he wound up murdered. What was that?
Also a great tragedy. He committed suicide.
Do you think he committed suicide?
I really do.
Have you looked?
This was a friend of mine. This is a guy that, and not a close friend, but this is someone that worked at OpenAI for a very long time. I was really shaken by this tragedy. I spent a lot of time trying to, read everything I could, as I'm sure you and others did too, about what happened. It looks like a suicide to me.
Why does it look like a suicide?
It was a gun he had purchased. It was this is gruesome to talk about, but I read the whole
That's right.
medical record. Does it not look like one to you?
No, he was definitely murdered, I think. There were signs of a struggle, of course. The surveillance camera, the wires had been cut. He had just ordered takeout food, come back from a vacation with his friends on Catalina Island. No indication at all that he was suicidal, no note, and no behavior. He had just spoken to a family member on the phone. And then he's found dead with blood in multiple rooms. So that's impossible. Seems really obvious he was murdered. Have you talked to the authorities about it?
I have not talked to the authorities about it.
And his mother claims he was murdered on your orders.
Do you believe that?
I'm asking.
You just said it. So do you believe that?
I think that it is worth looking into. And if a guy comes out and accuses your company of committing crimes, I have no idea if that's true or not, of course, and then is found killed and there are signs of a struggle, I don't think it's worth dismissing it. I don't think we should say, well, he killed himself when there's no evidence that the guy was depressed at all. I think, and if he was your friend, I would think you would want to speak to his mom or...
I did offer, she didn't want to.
So, do you feel that, when people look at that and they're like, it's possible that happened, do you feel that that reflects the worries they have about what's happening here? Like people are afraid that this is I
haven't done too many interviews where I've been accused of
Oh, I'm not accusing you at all. I'm just saying his mother says that. I don't think a fair read of the evidence suggests suicide at all. I just don't see that at all. And I also don't understand why the authorities, when there's signs of a struggle and blood in 2 rooms on a suicide, like how does that actually happen? I don't understand how the authorities could just kind of dismiss that as a
Tucker
suicide.
sits down with Sam Altman. They're having a conversation together. Tucker, out of nowhere, all of a sudden turns the interview into very, very serious but fair question of what happened to one of Sam Altman's former employees, and here's what happened.
So you had complaints from one programmer who said you guys are basically stealing people's stuff and not paying them, and then he wound up murdered. What was that?
Also a great tragedy.
No evidence that the guy was depressed at all.
Okay, I've been trying
Rob,
to
can you do me a favor, Rob? You know the facts of this story. Can you because we've had the family on. You want to kind of share with the audience who they're talking about?
Yes, his name was Suchir Balaji. He was an open AI researcher, worked for the company for a long time, was quickly rising up within the company, but started bringing up issues of copyright and the issues that the AI software was running into regarding that copyright. And then all of a sudden he went to Catalina Island, just like Sam Altman and Tucker talked about. Went to Catalina Island with his friends for a weekend, comes back, is in a great mood. We interviewed and spoke with his parents. Both of them said they talked to him when he came back. He had no signs of suicidal ideation or anything like that. And then the next thing you know, they find him dead inside of his home. Like Tucker mentioned, camera wires cut, very odd blood stains all over the apartment. When you look at the footage from inside the apartment, which the family provided us, when you look around the footage, it looks like it's a crime scene. There's things all over the place.
Yep.
And yet they ruled that this death was a suicide.
Yeah.
What did
So
the authorities say? Which is
Suicide.
It's suicide, which even
How
gets
did
even
they justify-
Adam. It's almost the same, bro. With Mark Middleton, who was hanging from a tree with an extension cord. They couldn't find the shotgun, and the police, the detective said it's suicide, as if people are all paid off and they're all in on it. And I absolutely love. Listen, say what you want. People hate Tucker. Remember that list I was talking about, where Charlie's on and that we're on. Tucker's up there. Tucker's up there. You know why? He's asking questions. Love him or hate him. He wants to know the truth, okay? And I don't know how everybody else feels. Seeing Sam Altman's body language and the way his energy was coming off, something seems a little off. And if this was a movie, and I heard everything that Tucker just said, and I heard everything that Rob just basically explained, and I saw the podcast with a crying mother who believes that her son was murdered. If it was a movie, guess what? I would say, just like in the movie Michael Clayton with George Clooney, you know, this huge billion-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar company, when somebody is talking and somebody's opening their mouth, it's not that hard, guys. It's not that hard to have somebody that's on payroll, but in a secret way, to go and kill somebody and make it look like it was a suicide. And in this case, they did a horrible, horrible job. OpenAI is worth what? $500 billion? And you have somebody internally saying, guys, they're stealing, and it could be a potential lawsuit to destroy your company. It's not that hard. Guys, it's not flesh and blood. It's evil, and evil just goes. By the way, even if I'm not accusing anybody at OpenAI of doing anything, but you think it's that hard when these people give orders, when Bush or any of these people say go and kill, it's not as if they're killing. Go drop bombs on Iraq, weapons of mass destruction. They're not signing it off. None of these people do it. They just say, hey, a decision needs to be made. Go do it, if they're even involved. So it's like, I watched the podcast just to see all the stuff that was in there. There's no way you could convince me that he killed himself, Adam. Zero. There's zero for me. You know, you say 100%. He was 100% murdered. Plain and simple.
in your opinion,
In my opinion,
Tom.
yes.
So this, you look at it with common sense, and you say to yourself, how is it possible for this to happen in the face of all this? Because you can have conclusion-based evidence. Someone makes a conclusion and gives it to you, and you accept the conclusion. Or you just look at simple facts that have all been laid out, and I won't repeat them here, and you're saying, this is a suicide. Really? I mean, this is like Vince Foster and all the inconsistency. They never found the bullet. The gun fact. That's a fact, not a conclusion.
Fact.
Gun was on the wrong side, and so for his last act, he committed suicide. Apparently, as they say, with the wrong hand. You know what? I've been right-handed all my life, but to call this one off, I'm going to shoot myself in my left, or whatever it was. And you see those things, and you see it called suicide. That's why now, Pat, we have the word suicided in our lexicon. That go look at the origin of the word suicided. He got suicided. Yeah. And now and why do we start talking that way? Why do we use that word? It's because the public and the fair-minded news media looks at it with such disdain and said, well, I guess he got suicided. Suicided means, regardless of what it says, some medical examiner will sign a piece of paper, paid off, instructed, pick the word you like, and it's a suicide. And that appears here. Then you go to, okay, so one simple question. Who influenced the head of the law enforcement responsible for investigating jurisdiction? There's one person in that jurisdiction responsible for investigating homicides, and suicide is a homicide. There's one person responsible for signing off on the medical examiner report. So if you have two people that are paid off or told, that's all you need. And then everybody else is told, keep your job, your mouth stays shut. It's so simple. Mm-hmm. It's so simple. But, this looks like this kid was suicided.
If this was a movie, Tom, you would know who the bad guy was. You know what I mean? There's no questioning it.
I don't know what happened in this situation, but I do want to address Tucker Carlson for a second, or sometimes what I'd like to call him Two-Face Tucker. Where's this energy when you're interviewing American foes? You feel very comfortable pushing the Ted Cruzes of the world and the Sam